because that's just a fun username.
Stickers.
Hello, Lorak. Yes, and let's get sticker streaks going. Apply stickers throughout this whole event, and maybe we'll break the record. I think the record was around 87 of the same sticker in a row right now, so it's a lot. I mean, if you can do it, I'll be very proud of you, and I think that is worth something. I don't know if it's worth more than stickers to you, but actually, no, I know it's not, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. And by the way, in case this is your first Fireside, since I know a lot of people are checking out this event, you're going to want to make sure to know that you can click between us by clicking the video below the big video that you're seeing at the top of the Fireside, so that you can watch us as I ask questions, as they answer, all that kind of thing. All hail Gamejolt. All hail Gamejolt indeed. And this is just going to be a real fun event. I think thank you all for joining us. And no Gamejolt. Oh, okay. Okay, Yeet Man. That's a big statement. That's a big statement. And I'm honored, but it's a big statement. And yeah, be sure to follow Steel Wool right here on Gamejolt to stay up to date with everything they're working on, because I know you want to learn more about what we talk about today in this interview. And so be sure to do all of that.
Oh, there's a Freddy. Jordan in there. Oh, there's a Freddy. I love that.
That's awesome.
And yeah, I'm Babbling Bendu. I'm an event producer here at Gamejolt. You can also follow me. I do art sometimes on Gamejolt. I've drawn lots of cool stuff. I did a lot of spooky art around the Halloween season. And so, yeah, hello. Oh, hello, Emulated Hedge.
I don't have any stickers. I don't have any stickers to place.
Oh, yeah, to get stickers, you have to complete quests.
Oh.
Right here on Gamejolt. It's like your daily quests, your weekly quests, and your daily quests can be used to charge your stickers, which you can use to support. You can use to, I was going to say support creators.
There you go.
But you can also use it to pay Gamejolt creators with our money. Which is pretty nice. Pretty nice thing to do. And so
I just saw something go past.
I think there's going to be a lot of that today.
There's going to be a lot of that. There's going to be a lot of, no.
I'm sure that was a very good question.
Okay. Seemed like it was.
Hello, Sunrise Productions. Thank you for joining us. Live interview with two members of the Steel Wool team, which I'll introduce after I do my general sort of explanation of how cool Gamejolt is and tell you about one of the cool events we have coming up right here on Gamejolt, and I will reveal exclusive. But we have 5 minutes before we actually get started. So if any of you want to get water or anything before we talk about all this cool stuff, this is a great way of time to step away, get something to drink, get some food, get some of those candy that you've been throwing up here. Just a good way.
Not throwing up.
Well, no. Halloween was Monday.
So. Yeah. Tuesday was throwing up the candy from Monday.
We got some Halloween stickers. Oh, I like the Halloween ones.
Yeah, lots of Halloween stickers. Tell us actually about your Halloween.
Bob Ross. That was good.
Yeah, and in the chat, tell us how your Halloween went. Did you have a happy Halloween? I gave away some candy, and we set up in front of someone else's house because no trick-or-treaters came to our house. So we just carried a giant bowl of metal, like a giant metal bowl of candy, like blocks away, and it got taken immediately. And someone said they were Gregory for
I just saw that too. Someone said they were Gregory for
Oh man, that's good.
That's really cool.
I went as a wizard.
Oh, that's a great costume.
There's a pictures from my television series.
I went as Charmander.
Laverne and Shirley with wizards is what I was going for. Yeah.
I threw on a Charmander onesie to give out the candy because I wanted to be bright orange and easily visible as a person to give out candy.
Yeah, one of our designers did a really cool one. She dressed up as she did a pirate, and so the kids don't come to her house. So she actually made this like roll around pirate ship that she put candy in and then took it around the neighborhood rolling around. Like, that's such a great idea.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I love when people go full on like theatrical for Halloween and really like take it to the next level.
Yeah.
We also had a designer who dressed up as the Angel of Death from Hellboy 2. That was really
Whoa.
Yeah, she did a really good job on that one. Oh,
I love
the
that.
detail was just it took her like 3 weeks or something. So
I got a Freddy eye.
And Lorak pointing out your great piano too.
Oh man, I love that one. It's because I've gone through a few and I've been waiting. I wanted to find one that felt like the keys were weighted, correctly. So this is a good one.
That's really cool.
When I was when I was younger, it was one of those. We actually had like a little stand-up rehearsal piano at the house. Nothing fancy. But it was really nice to grow up with one and just have it there in the basement to pluck around on whenever. Never did anything good. Only like television themes and movie music and.
I love hearing
video
TV.
games.
I love TV themes and game music on a piano. I think that's so cool.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was funny.
Oh, Rocky, the fireside itself will be about an hour once we really get formally underway and fully started, which will be very soon. I'm just really excited. But first, before I talk to our guests, I'm going to go over some of my spiel about all the cool things happening right here on Gamejolt, and also some info about what Gamejolt is, in case you're new here and just checking us out for the first time because of this interview. And if you are, welcome. What is Gamejolt? Well, Gamejolt is a creator-focused social media platform for gamers to share unique streams, content, music, photo. I'm going to start that over. I can do better.
Take two.
In case you're new here and joining us for the first time, because a lot of people have expressed interest in this and are really excited for this whole interview. Gamejolt is a creator-focused social media platform for gamers to share unique streams, content, music, photos, videos, and games. We are dedicated, and I mean dedicated, to supporting and building opportunities for a global community of creators, including artists, streamers, musicians, developers, writers, cosplayers, game studios, fandoms, and more. And one of the cool things that we're doing right here on Gamejolt is partnering with Relogic, the talented studio behind Terraria, for the event Skeletron Prime Attacks, which is a Terraria x Gamejolt collaboration. You'll be able to work together from November 14th to the 21st to defeat the mechanical evil that is threatening the very existence of our Terraria community on Gamejolt. Craft your favorite weapons endorsed by the Terraria Wiki by combining ingredient stickers at crafting stations. Gamejolt will send you on a quest each day to gather ingredients for a new weapon type until Skeletron Prime arrives, and then we'll party up in a live stream to defeat it once and for all. You're going to want to join our Terraria community to learn more. This is going to be such a cool event. I'm so excited for this. November 14th, it begins. You won't want to miss it. And earlier I mentioned that there's a little bit of exclusive that we're revealing here. And now it's time for that exclusive, because you heard it here first. But on November 29th, the Gamejolt Creator Program is officially going live, meaning you can make money with your content, whether you share videos, art, streams, or games. You're going to want to join the Gamejolt community for upcoming announcements and check out gamejolt.com/creators, which is the site on the screen right here, to learn more about being a Gamejolt creator. And if you want to get that link again, you can just type !creators in the chat, or follow the link that Lorak just pasted. There you go.
Well done. You got it on the second take.
Well done.
Thank you.
Cool.
And
some of the pictures that popped up, those were neat. I saw Wally in there. Somebody did like a really, really cool Winston. That was neat.
Yeah. There's lots of really cool stuff from our creators, but I'm honored to get to chat with both of you, Steelwool's creative director, Jason J. Top Topolsky, and Steelwool Studios design director, Brian Freyermuth. Jason, would you like to explain what you do at Steelwool and otherwise introduce yourself?
Well, I am Jason Topolsky. I'm one of the co-founders of the studio. I am also the creative director of the studio, and man, I was originally a AV nerd. Worked at Pixar Animation Studios for 14 years in production. Went over to Telltale Games for a couple of years. Worked on Tales from the Borderlands and Minecraft Story Mode, and that's where I met Brian.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
Yeah,
Well, with
so-
that segue, Brian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, you're on that side.
That's I know with the different flipping of the X's. So hi, I'm Brian Fryermuth. I'm the design director over at Stonewall Studios. I've been in the industry for quite a while. I worked on the original Fallout way back in '97. I've worked on a bunch of different games since then, and then worked at Telltale for about 6 years. Me and J-Top met on Minecraft Story Mode DLC, as you can see from the white pumpkin poster I have up here. I don't know how many people actually got to play the DLC before Telltale went under, but that was from episode 6, one of our favorites. My job is basically to just kind of oversee all the design on all the Stillwell games and kind of oversee my department of designers who are all just kind of working on all the different things we're doing.
That's so cool. Thank you both for joining me today. So the first question I had is that how did you balance paying tribute to Five Nights at Freddy's legacy with adding new things to the world of FNAF in Security Breach? Because it's such a unique take to just do it in this whole new era.
Well, it's funny. Really, like we wanted, we knew that we were going to be like a more open world space, but we wanted it to feel like it was Freddy's. It was still a Freddy's game. So one of the things that we really kind of doubled down on were the office games.
Yeah.
The office games throughout the building were supposed to be, they were like intended callbacks to the gameplay of the original. It's kind of like you make a Star Wars project, you want to see a lightsaber, right? What are the things that make Freddy's Freddy's? And we wanted to hit those notes, and also to kind of like hit the tone of the original games, like in the atmosphere and dialogue. Like one of the things I absolutely love Scott's like phone guy hand unit dialogue. Like he's got this great like dark comedy mix, and we really want to kind of honor that and include it. Otherwise it wouldn't feel like FNAF, So all aspects of the originals.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the biggest challenges from my end too, was kind of like how do you translate like the office games and those feelings that the players have with the original FNAF games in kind of a free roaming environment. Because in the original FNAF games you were basically in one place, so it was easier to know how the characters were going to come in and how the animatronics were going to get you and all this kind of stuff. So that's why kind of how we ended up with like the Chica Kitchen game. We ended up with like the Roxy Arcade office game, the Backstage one, which is still my favorite. That was the most elaborate, where you were trying to get Freddy through that maze while also the two animatronics were trying to get you through the doors. But it was definitely a challenge. But I think we did a really good job kind of honoring that.
Well, and along those same lines, what was the thought process behind specifically making like a retro version of the world? Like, did any other horror franchises influence your spin on the 80s, or was it just more based on experience of the 80s?
It's funny because there's that 30-year cycle. Things come back every 30 years. Like the 80s was the 50s, and then we were bringing back the 80s as kind of like a nod to the original games. All of the places we were kids, we were born in the 70s, right?
Yeah, both of us.
So we were like in that sweet spot of going to the actual like family fun centers when they were opening the first time. So we were remembering a lot of the stuff that we knew when we were kids. And then, well, what would like the retro future version be of, an 80s style, family fun center? It's like the neon, like the malls. It's all that time period, like
the scary animatronics.
Yeah, scary animatronics. And
because those are all just terrifying when I was a kid. They really just were.
Yeah, they
Absolutely.
Really were. And there's creepy stuff they just had in general. Like, think of like a ball pit and how gross it is, Like when you're older and you're like,
and
how often do they clean that stuff?
yeah, the dirty animatronics with the like maintenance that I supposedly happened, but you never really saw evidence of.
Yeah, and then it's funny too because it's like, jobs that we had when we were teens. Like I worked in a movie theater, like concessions, projectionist, usher, and some of the stuff you'd see like, oh, Jurassic Park came out when I was there, and you could like people dumping popcorn everywhere, and like this was an AMC theater, right? And legitimately, like the way that we had to clean up during the crowds was we had a leaf blower that we like blew popcorn behind the screen underneath, and to clean up at the end of the night, right? So you just
Yeah.
have piles of garbage and it's so gross. All the mats that you put down to like walk on that were spilled with butter and your shoes were just soaked. There was like a room off to the side that had like, kind of like a shallow base with a shower thing to spray stuff down with a hose. It's like throw them back out. It was so gross. All that kind of behind the scenes nastiness.
Yeah, but it was also cool though, because in the 80s you would have all that nastiness behind the scenes, and they'd all just try to polish it up for the people coming in. Because it's like, oh, it's got to look ultra clean to all the people walking in. But then you walk behind the scenes of that stuff, and you're like, oh my God, how does anyone even walk back here? This is nasty.
Oh yeah. Gross little hallways, poorly lit, boxes and boxes and boxes of
there was no sanitation back then.
No.
Oh yeah.
So we've been talking about the 80s, but is there another era in the FNAF world that you'd like to tackle in the future, like a 70s FNAF game or some other one?
Well, for me, one thing that I've always would love to do is get kind of back to. I have no clue if we'll ever be able to do this, but getting back to kind of like the origin of like Fazbear Entertainment or the origin of Freddy Fazbear. I loved the teasers that we put out. Those are some of my favorite teasers I've seen. So it's all, it depends on what we can do going forward. But yeah, I would love to go back and kind of see how things were made.
Same here. I'd like to head further back into the 70s as opposed to like doing the 90s version, right? I mean, we've seen the 90s version. It's after the 80s was run down. Right? We've already done that. Scott did that. Like there's so much to explore.
That's a really good point. And I love the diner posters and everything. I think that would be so cool to get to go back to that original era. So one of the ways that Security Breach really stands out, speaking of Freddy, is making him your protector instead of someone trying to hunt you. How did you approach that subversion of expectations?
That was a funny one. Early on, we were talking about, who you are as a player and who we have played, right? And how the bots respond to the security guard specifically. And well, what if the security guard was an enemy in the game? Vanessa being in the game, a person in the game that was a security guard, and you're not the security guard. What if you're a kid? Well, if you're a kid, how do the bots react to you differently? Well, what if this time we actually see how Freddy would respond to an actual child as a protector? It's the bots have always been against the adults that were bad. So if you're a kid, you're going to get a very different experience. So, making Freddy like the pal, making him someone comfortable to be around that really is trying to help you. He's doing his best. Like he's very lovable. Like there was so much to explore there that was new. That did feel like it fit the world too.
Yeah, I love that. So one of the another thing that stood out about Security Breach was the sheer scale of the game. And it's especially impressive coming from an indie studio like Steel Wolf, because you really punched above your weight in terms of that like massiveness. How did you decide to make it that much bigger? And then do you have advice for indie devs about how to similarly punch above their weight and hit scale that you might not expect from an indie studio?
It's funny is like when it comes to the scale of the space, it's like Brian and I, when we grew up, when we were younger, like the spaces were huge, right? Like we had a family fun center that opened in Tacoma. There was a Chuck E. Cheese that opened. It was 2 stories. It was one of the things they're always talking about was like this Tacoma, Washington ones. Like they were big. They had multiple rooms, multiple stages. Like they were enormous. So what if someday we do that, get into something bigger, right? You know, oh, got the beep from the alarms. Right. What were you gonna say, Brian?
Well, it's also just the advice I would give is just ambition is good.
Yeah.
You know, we were a scrappy little team, and we're growing a lot more now. We've made sure to kind of grow and learn from everything from how it happened with security breach and stuff. But it's just always have that kind of ambition. Be proud of what you do. You know, if it's going to be big and if it's going to be grand, especially with the amount of like tools that indies have now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 20 years ago, you couldn't even think about doing a game like this as an indie team.
Yeah.
There's no way. But with Unreal and Unity and all that kind of stuff, you have a lot more opportunities now to kind of create the vision you have in your head to the kind of scope that you want. It is kind of amazing when you look at the games that are out there nowadays, what they can actually do with the ambition that they have.
Interesting, yeah. Well, speaking of what I'm sure fueled your ambition, what were some of your creative influences in terms of making Security Breach, both in terms of other FNAF games, but also more broadly?
Of course, all the FNAF, the entire
Yeah.
FNAF universe, that fuels everything. It's like there's a lot of stuff that we love in FNAF that we want to bring back. We were super excited. Like let's get Music Man back here. Music Man's so creepy. Let's get him back in the game. So we got to pull. We got to pull from all of the original source material, which was great. The actual experiences that we've had with theme parks and family fun centers fuel so much of it.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
really, when it comes down to it, yeah, the Pizzaplex is a place I want to visit. I want to go there, right? I want to, like, what is the coolest place that we could think of? Like, well, what do you want it? Well, I want putt-putt. I want laser tag. Well, what if it had a bowling alley too? The arcade I grew up with was in a bowling alley.
Yep, me too. Yep,
Right?
the bowling alley / arcade. That was the one we had down the street from us too.
Absolutely.
Taking all of that and kind of putting it together in one big mega amusement. Pizzaplex was really fun.
It really is the dream.
One of my big inspirations was, a couple blocks from where I grew up was a place called Pizza and Pipes, and this is like pre Chuck E. Cheese showbiz, right? Where it was like this giant 2-story tall, pizzeria with a big organ in the middle, and they'd bring out, pianists that would take requests, and they would play live. Like, oh, I'll do a theme to Star Wars. I got you get like 50 times people putting in the request. And you could see like they had a bubble machine hooked up that push a button and then would do bubbles in there. They'd have a screen that came in and it would show movies on the screen. They'd have people come out dressed like Darth Vader, and pretend like the lightsaber and stuff. And it had games there. It was amazing. And the place burned down. Right.
Oh no.
Older, right? So there's like this creepy tragedy to it too. So that's always been one of my memories.
That makes complete sense. I mean, I think I now want to visit there in addition to the Pizzaplex.
Know, right?
So
yeah, it was really cool. Like pictures and look at pictures of line on it, seeing their pictures, the aftermath, just horrible. But
that definitely puts the Chuck E. Cheese I grew up with to shame, which was a little rinky-dink one-story one.
Oh yeah, no, I had the little Chuck E. Cheese 30 minutes from the house that my beggar and my mom would drive 30 minutes grumbling the entire time to get to this Chuck E. Cheese over in far away from my little small town.
Yeah.
I want to go dive in the ball pit and accidentally find some chewing gum.
Yeah.
Or change. Oh, when you get 5 quarters down there, man.
If you're lucky, it's change. Yeah.
Right. Some lost kid at the bottom.
Speaking of discovering hidden things, what's your favorite Easter egg that you hid in Security Breach?
I would say I have a favorite, but no one's found it yet.
Oh.
What is it, Brian?
Oh, I'm not going to say it.
It's really dumb. My favorite Easter egg is a total unintended Easter egg because there's some stuff that we did not mean to leave in the game when it shipped, and people have pulled out like all the scratch dialogue. For example, they found all the audio files, which was me at my computer with my microphone doing scratch for temp and pitching my voice up as Gregory. That is all my like total garbage Gregory. or my Freddy voice. You know,
Yep. Oh, the Freddy voice was great. Pitching that down, man.
Yeah.
I love both of those
So
answers.
silly.
I love the bomb you dropped about the fact that there's still undiscovered Easter eggs.
There was another funny one too. We were just talking about it yesterday because it always cracks us up. We had this idea that we didn't follow through with when we were recording Chica, right? We're like, hey, how funny would it be if we did all of the Chica dialogue but Valley Girl?
Ooh.
Right? So we recorded it. We're like, oh, what if we put in like there's like a selectable somewhere you can choose to play in 80s mode. And then that's the only thing that changes is like Chica's like all total Valley, like right? And we recorded all that. That accidentally ended up in files too. So people have pulled that out and they're like, what's this other take of Chica?
Well, I mean, because that's the thing that's fun. I mean,
That was hilarious.
When we were working at Telltale, there was whole episodes of dialogue that would accidentally be left in and stuff. It's like it's something that happens, and it's something that's funny because you always have alternate takes. You always have a good time in the VO booth. Like, what if you try it like this? That would be an outtake, and then it actually goes in, and you're like, ooh, oops.
I mean, and what's great is it just becomes then cool hidden stuff for the community to discover, and so it's still great, that it's in there.
Yeah.
Speaking of incorporating discarded pieces, the Blob. The Blob includes body parts from animatronics that otherwise aren't in Security Breach. How did you choose what animatronics to incorporate into this malicious mash of machine parts?
Fazbear Entertainment disavows all knowledge of said Blob. I don't know what to tell you there.
Yep, that'll be our answer.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's any other answer to that.
What could there be?
I don't even know what there could be. So I'll ask my next question. Security Breach shifts from that 5-night structure to sort of treating each hour as a night. What's your personal favorite night in Security Breach?
Mine is what we like to call hour 4, and that was basically the parts and service. I love the Endo warehouse. It was so much fun working with those endos because they had the whole weeping angel mechanic from Doctor Who where you would stare at them and they'd freeze, and then you'd look away and they'd start moving, and you'd stare at them and they'd freeze.
Yeah.
And so we had that whole warehouse, which was a nursery for all the endos. So I love that. I love the whole parts and service game itself with Headless Freddy when you're trying to reattach his head and he could jump scare you because he wasn't feeling quite himself, as he put it. So yeah, that whole hour I just think just works on such a good level, like just kind of capturing the dread of the original FNAF games. And yeah, I will always love like that Endo warehouse. That is my favorite.
Before I answer the question, Brian, you just reminded me of one of the little bugs that we had when we were working on the game, where the endos were active at all times. It was a total bug.
Even when you're in other parts of the Pizzaplex.
Yeah, you're running around the lobby, you start the game, you're walking around the atrium, and all of a sudden endos are showing up out of nowhere. You're like, oh my God, how'd they get here?
How'd they get out of the warehouse?
Yeah.
They had a mind of its own at one point. They really did. You could like fly out in the editor and see them running around in the distance. You're like, they're not. How did they do that?
Yeah,
that was funny. Haunted endos at that point.
Yeah, eventually they would find you wherever you were. Yeah, it was a funny bug.
I enjoyed the chat's response of, "Oh, that's just a little bug."
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
Little one.
It's very funny. Sorry, but what was
Not
your
supposed to be
favorite?
active down there? Oh, and then my favorite hour, because the way we talked about the nights, right? There was originally a version where we were thinking of nights, and then we came up with the, hey, well, what if we put these kind of story beats into an hourly structure, right? And that's where we ended up. Hour 0, as we like to call it, is our intro. Everything leading up to midnight. So that's hour 0. My favorite was the 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock time. That is where the player gets the option. They go into the atrium for the first time and they see exactly how big the space is, because it's enormous, right? And then they have the option of, well, go upstairs or go downstairs. And it's the first branch in the game. And so I think everybody experiences something a little different there when they hit it. Like, oh, wait, I can actually get 2 vastly different experiences from this point. I can go upstairs and go through all chips, and I can get to the, into the prize counter, or I can go down to the kitchen and go through like the food counters, right? Yeah. Very different. That's always been my favorite.
For some reason, as you were saying the answer, I thought of, oh, and then the third answer, go home. Just leave. Just no, yep. I'm out of here. I'm done.
Yeah, I'm done.
This is too big for me. No, thank you.
Yeah.
But speaking of your favorites, do you have a personal favorite animatronic from FNAF?
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I love all of them. It was really wonderful to see all their different personalities start to kind of evolve as we were working with animation and working with Jason and working with the script and stuff. Just kind of seeing who the different ones were. I mean, people love the daycare attendant. There's so much fan art and stuff about that. But for me, from a game designer standpoint, I will always go back to the endos. I will always go back to the endos. Just the way they operated, just the way they looked. Just like in the end of the endo warehouse, where you'd walk into the room and you saw like 10 of them on hooks, and you're just like, oh God, they're all going to come to life, aren't they? Yep, they're all going to come to life, aren't they? And you hit that button and all 10 of them drop, and you're like, all right, how do I keep them all, knowing that there's a horde behind me as well? How do I keep them all in view? So yeah, that was my absolute favorite in the game.
I say Foxy. Foxy's my favorite since part 1. I have my daughter too. Like she's 9 now, but she's been a fan since like way back when it first started. And like we have Foxy mask. One of my favorite little moments that she did was she put the mask on, made a pile of dolls in her room, and then called Grandma in, and she hid in the dolls, with the mask on, and then like jump scared Grandma. Grandma, get in here.
E.T. It's a scary.
It was so E.T. It was an E.T. jump scare.
It's an E.T. jump scare.
Yeah. I love Foxy's mechanic in the first game. That was always like one of the freakiest. Keep you on your toes. But my favorite, for very different reasons, is always Helpy.
Yeah,
Helpy is just like this kind of perfect little tragicomedy. He falls and his little spine breaks, trying to jump in. I absolutely love Helpy. It's like perfect Scott humor. So good.
Yeah. You touched on it a little bit in your answer about Foxy, but what has it been like working on a series that resonates so strongly with kids specifically? Like it's one of those things that people will 100% grow up with and look fondly back on when they're older.
Yeah, it's really incredible. Like having a daughter that in school, I remember in first grade, this is after we had signed Help Wanted, right? We were going to Help Wanted. And counting the number of backpacks on the first graders that were all Freddy's related versus how many Star Wars backpacks there were, right? And kind of realizing like, oh my God, wow, like this, for the younger generation, this is their like new huge Star Wars. It's enormous, right? And we're so lucky to have the opportunity to be a part of it and work with Scott on this, like it's really amazing.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I've worked on Disney, Epic Mickey. I've worked on Minecraft Story Mode. I've worked on even a SpongeBob game, and I've never seen a fan community like this that's just so passionate about just everything that has to do with it. And it's interesting because it's like 8 years ago, my son was like, "Oh, Dad, you got to play this game." Or it was like 5 years ago or something. But oh, Dad, you got to play this game called Five Nights at Freddy's. And so I played through like all of them up until that point, and didn't even think about them again until Jason's like, "Hey, want to come over and work on one?" I'm like, "Okay, sounds great."
You
to
would
me.
be perfect. Get over here.
Yep, it would be perfect. Well, me and J-Top had lots of stories. We had lots of talks about horror and everything else when we were in Telltale. We were very much on the same page when it came to like 80s horror and horror games and movies and all of that. So
the original Five Nights came out when we were at Telltale.
Yep.
Remember, Chris Schroyer was a producer that I worked with, and he came over to my desk one day and he's like, "Hey, okay, go check out Five Nights at Freddy's. You're gonna love it. It's totally made for you. You got to play this game." Right? And because he knew like I was a big horror dork, you know, I was a big horror fan, and it's like, "Oh yeah, oh, okay, you're gonna love this."
So speaking of the incredibly vibrant FNAF fan community, what are some of your favorite like examples of the fan community's creativity, like memes or fan games or other things that just jump out at you and you keep talking about at Steel Wool?
Well, it's amazing to me the fact that we never, and it's all stuff you can never predict. You can never ever predict when you're working on something what's going to hit and what's not going to hit and what people are going to love. And for me, the most fascinating one was the whole Vanessa conversation on TikTok, where literally she's talking to Freddy down by the health station about and she's talking to him about how he has to go back and everything else, and how that became such a huge, just massive hit on TikTok. Became such a meme, just that one little conversation, little serious conversation between Vanessa and Freddy. It's amazing when that stuff hits.
Yeah, it's incredible to see. I mean, I even seeing what blows up in the FNAF community here on Gamejolt has also been just incredible to see. So have you ever had nightmares about anything from FNAF during your work on the series? Because I know I would.
You know, it's funny. So one thing for memes, Goongalore. Goongalore's the best. And Buff Healthy.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. As far as like having nightmares, it's when you're so close to a project, like don't have nightmares. Don't have nightmares about it, right? Think about it all the time though. Like I have notebooks that I keep near me, keep near the bed. You know, I have like these ideas creep in at night, and then it's like wake up and have some. What about this? What about this? I don't want to forget that. You know, so it's like nighttime ends up being very inspirational.
Yeah.
Well, it's always been that way with me too. I mean, my nightmares have always been the inspiration for my novels, the books I write, and just everything that I do, game wise and everything. So anything I had, any weird dreams I had about FNAF, just made it in the game. That's just it. Just made it.
Yeah, right.
But I do have to agree with Jason. You don't really have many nightmares when you're working on a thing. But my stress dreams and nightmares usually consisted of, if I'm working in like the Unreal Editor for 5 days straight, I will start having nightmares about the nodes and connecting nodes and maps and loading maps and the Unreal Editor coming at me and stuff. That's where my nightmares come from.
Yeah, my actual nightmares that I still have occasionally are all like theater based, being on stage and not knowing your lines, that kind of stuff.
I love that. But speaking of things you may have thought of while you're thinking about FNAF 24/7, is there a specific type of gameplay that you'd personally like to introduce at some point, but just haven't found a spot for yet?
You know, some people found it in Help Wanted, and they pulled it out and they saw that we were playing around with a multiplayer mechanic, and they found it in Help Wanted. Stuart, our head engineer, he was working on this thing. It was such a great idea, but we weren't going to have time to like really complete it. And it was a really cool idea. Like, we'd love to get back to that at some point. That would be really neat. Like we would be totally open to doing some multiplayer.
That would be
Stick with
so
your
cool.
friends. Oh, come on, yeah. How can you go wrong?
Speaking then of Help Wanted, though, what was the thought process behind choosing which scenes were iconic enough to include in the collection as mini games of their own?
It's funny because Help Wanted began as, hey, let's make the first game. Let's just make Five Nights. And then we did. And then we were like, this is great. Oh my God. Like, what if we also did part 2? And what if we also added the part 3? And hey, Scott, could we do this for me? And what if we did some such a location? Or what if we threw this in? And what if we did this? And it just became this kind of ballooning, like, wouldn't it be cool if, right? And we got to pick like so many things that we thought would be fantastic in VR. You know, even just like plush trap at the end of the hall, right?
Yeah.
We played around with that, and we'd put people in the headset at work, and they'd say, nope, take the headset off immediately. I'm not playing it. It's like, perfect. That's what we want. More of that. No way I'm going to sit at the end of this hall. Like, good, we're doing it. You know, so it really came up. It really came up because we didn't want to stop. We didn't want to stop making them. You know,
It sounds like the most positive form of scope creep I've ever heard of.
Oh, it was absolutely scope creep.
Absolutely.
The whole thing was scope creep. Yeah.
How does the design process differ for a VR experience like Help Wanted versus like a non-VR experience like Security Breach? Are there certain jump scares that maybe don't work outside of VR that work real well in VR?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's, you don't really think about it as you're playing it, because I was a big VR player before joining Steel Wool, and the stuff I've learned so far has just been, it's you don't really think about it when you're playing it, but there's just little stuff like the fact that you can't have a jump scare that takes control away from the player, because if you have the player get snapped around, they get sick.
Yeah.
Because you have that, unlike watching a flat screen where it's distance from yourself, your brain, when you have too much movement and no movement of your body, that's where the disconnect comes in on these games. And so just between the UI and the hands and jump scares, yeah, there's so much difference between the two of them.
Yeah. Being able to go into a room, have somebody with the headset on, and see them practically fall over. Right. You know, there's nothing like it. You know, even when, man, there was a group that we had in one time early, and we were doing like Chica repair. Somebody's like, I'm not scared of anything. I'm not scared of anything. I'm not scared of anything. And then the roaches came out. They're like, oh, God, no. Right? It's like, and when you're playing in what we call flat, you know, non-VR, it's like, oh, there's roaches on screen. You know, no response from the person. It's so much more personal and frightening in VR than flat. And then you kind of get desensitized. Like, I'm not really scared by anything in flat games anymore, because I'm always like, man, in VR it's just so much freakier. Everything is so much scarier in VR, except Mapbot. Mapbot will always get me in Security Breach.
Yep.
I always forget Mapbot's there, and then
yep, he is the most frightening jump scare in that entire game, is Mapbot.
That makes total sense. I know one time we set up a VR thing where you were on top of a building and blew a fan at people, and they just like flipped out.
Oh yeah.
Because that extra sensory
walk
thing.
the plank experience one.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Man, it's so much more personal and frightening.
Mhm.
And then as far as like our process goes, going from when we were in VR, we were in person, right? And then while we were working partway through Security Breach, we went remote. And then we have stayed remote. We are a remote studio. We've got people all over the country now. So not being in a room together, looking over each other's shoulders, you know, and that kind of collaboration, it's just very different. You know, you miss that. You know, you miss that a lot. It's very different.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. That it's a sort of fundamentally different, even if you can still create great stuff both ways.
Yeah. We'll do meetings in person at times. You know, like especially when it comes to like story and concept work. Well,
creative kickoffs.
Yeah, creative
Creative
kickoffs.
kickoffs.
Fortunately, Brian and I live 20 minutes away from each other, so that's nice. We can like get together and do an escape room.
Yeah.
Which we did one a couple weekends ago. That was fantastic. But
that sounds really cool.
Yeah. It really helps to have like the camaraderie, everybody in person.
Yeah. Speaking of personal stuff, like outside of work, like escape rooms, do you like horror personally? And what are some of your favorite horror movies and games?
Do we like horror, Jason?
Maybe a bit.
Yes, do you like horror person with a Camp Crystal Lake sign in their house?
Yeah. I was so happy they had that. That was great. Yeah. Here's my other child. Yeah.
Ooh.
No, I've been a big horror fan forever. It was one of those things where it's like comes out of my parents were both art teachers, right? Yeah. And they wouldn't let my brother and I watch anything that was rated R at the time in the 80s, right? And so the stories we would hear from our friends would be like, oh, and then Jason did this, and then this arrow comes through someone's neck, and oh my God, there's blood everywhere, and what Freddy did, oh, the veins coming out. It's all way worse in your head, right? And so we had access to like a video camera, and so my brother and I started making like little dumb horror movies together. We got like effects books without ever seeing any horror movies yet. We got like let's book with Tom Savini. Tom Savini, like here's the blood recipe, using Caro corn syrup, and hey, this is how we can light somebody on fire. We can hit each other with the car, that kind of stuff. And we would make all these horrible little videos, and then we started watching the horror movies. And we're like, oh, well, these aren't as bad as we thought. Like, oh, these are kind of funny. These are goofy. I mean, favorite of all times, Evil Dead 2 is by far, I love Sam Raimi. That was my favorite, but I was putting together this list of trying to remember every horror movie I've ever watched. And I'm up in the 500s. And
wow.
Like 500. And then it's like, I'm, going through like Netflix. I'm like, oh yeah, Dale and Tucker versus Evil. Oh, I even have that. Why didn't that make the list yet? And then I have to go on that. It's like, oh yeah, I totally forgot I saw that thing. Or, I used to watch like USA Up All Night.
Oh yeah.
Or Captain USA, like all those dumb shows.
Brian? For me, I've always been a big horror person too. Even growing up as a kid. And actually, a funny story is I actually wooed my wife. We met in high school with a horror novel. Basically, I wrote a horror novel. I don't even know where it is at this point. But yeah, she like took it home, and like she had to keep all the lights on and close all the windows. And so even back then, I was just like, and like Jason, like, we constantly talk about different horror movies and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
For me, lately, the one that's really stood out to me is one called Fear Street on Netflix. Mainly because Fear Street, it takes all of like the horror tropes and like goes left instead of right. And so it's like they take all of them and they kind of weave you through their narrative, and you're like, oh well, this is a standard horror movie. And nope, it's not. So it's just really well written, and I think that's for me just like nowadays it's like Haunting of Hill House, the Fear Street movies, all these like really well written horror stuff. It's just really cool now. And it's also good to get back into horror because I worked on a game called Run Like Hell way back in the day. That was kind of a survival horror on a space station, a little cult classic kind of thing. And so it's kind of nice to get back into horror again for the first time.
Yeah, Brian was the one that pointed out Fear Street to me.
Yeah.
That was such a funny one. Like, you think the Netflix algorithms know you and they'll suggest what you should be watching. And I'm like, I never even heard of this thing. And Brian, you're like,
this movie is made for you.
Yeah, are you kidding? I was like, oh yeah. You'd think it would be like #1 thing that would pop up.
Yeah, you think that would be the #1 ad whenever he went on the Netflix.
Yeah. And then I blew through all 3 of them in like a night. 2 nights. It was 2 nights.
Speaking of well-written horror, do you have anything that you'd like to tease about Ruin? Since that's coming soon. Ish.
Well, I think the thing that I want to say about it, because we can't tease too much, because obviously that would we would tease too much. But for me, I think the big thing that we're trying to do is kind of lean into kind of the sense of dread more. That some of the, like the Endo warehouse, like the daycare, we're trying to lean a little bit more into that in the experience that we're making for the DLC, which has been really kind of cool to kind of go in that direction.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. Okay. I mean, honestly, chat loved that tease, so I think that's wonderful. And hearing that about the sense of dread seems very exciting for them.
It's kind of why, I mean, the teaser poster that we released, it's why it is so much darker and so much more like ruined. Get it, ruined. Yep. It's just kind of a cool direction that we're really happy about going down.
It was really nice to see the response to the poster.
Yeah, it's an amazing poster, and I think I echo everyone when I say it looks so cool. Do you have any advice for anyone who's looking to get into the creative and design sides of game development?
When it comes to horror, it's funny. I would really point people to world creating for horror and why. Like, where does horror come from? And it really kind of goes back to the old morality plays, right? Where there's who is the victim? It's always about a person that has done something that has caused a situation and then getting their comeuppance. It's kind of like the heart of it, right? So if you go to look at anthology horror, like Creepshow or Tales from the Dark Side, Tales from the Crypt, Night Gallery, Alfred Hitchcock, right? In a very short format, you get these really very clear lessons and world building that they do in the a 20-minute episode or an hour of here's somebody doing something really, really bad, like they murdered someone to try to get something they want, and because of that, something happens, often ironically, that then comes back to bite them. A creature is created, a situation is created, something horrible that puts them into the horror situation. And then they're judged and they get their just desserts. That's kind of where a lot of it stems from. And you get tons and tons of great examples of real quick setup and payoff for horror. Every big, horror icon, it essentially fits that structure in a way. Go look at anything, right? Why is Freddy Krueger popular? Well, it's a revenge story, isn't it? Miss Voorhees, it's a revenge story. These aren't just these supernatural forces that came out of nowhere to just hurt people and punish people, right? There were results of other wrongdoing. I don't know. That's what I'd say. Go look at that. Try not to set out to make a cool looking villain. Go make a monster that have a reason for it, right?
I love that explanation, and I especially love, highlighting all those classic horror things like Tales from the Crypt is so smart as a way to direct people to it. Brian, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, just when it comes to game development, I think the biggest advice that I could give is make games and play games. It really does come down to having the passion for what you're doing. Because I've always said that if I ever hire someone, it's always I'll take passion over experience any day. The passion for the games that the company that you're interviewing with, the passion for the company that you want to get into, the genres that you love, all of that, and just play games, analyze them. It does get a little tough as a game designer when you start playing games, because you do start picking them apart. You start going, this was really great until X, and then you're like, why did they do that. And you listen to other people who are like, oh no, it was great. And you're like, yeah, but what about that one little design part? What about that level that like sucked over there? So, but it's good to get in the game industry, you know, just play games and analyze what you like and what you don't like about them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, Brian. There was a thing that I think that maybe I talked to you about this before. There was this book like about game design that had like Richard Garfield in it and stuff. And one of the things that stated was go watch or play the games that you don't like.
Yeah, there's that too.
And figure out what it is that other people like about it. Like if you don't like poker, go play poker. Try to find the thing that other people are attracted to and why. You know, things are popular for a reason.
Yep.
You know, go figure out what drives it all. You know,
I've had to do that because I've worked on space sims, I've worked on RPGs, kids games, platformers, survival horror games, and so every time you go into a new wrestling games, it's like every time you go into a new genre, it's like even if I don't like that genre, you have to go in and you have to figure out why is that genre popular. You know, why do people like this, and I'm going to basically make this game as best as it could be.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think especially the point about learning from the games that you don't like, because those can always be so instructional and informative.
Yeah.
I'll just ask then one final question, which is it's a broad one, so you can feel free to answer it how you want. But is there anything else you want to tease about what we can expect from FNAF coming up, or is the Ruin tease about all that is good to tease right now?
We have other stuff coming down the pipe, but we can't really say anything about that. The big focus right now is Ruin, though. I mean, that is the big focus is getting that DLC out, getting it good. That's just the main focus right now. But there are definitely other stuff coming down the pipe.
That's the perfect level of tease, I think. Thank you both for joining us on this. Is there any final words you'd like to say to everyone watching before we wrap up? Any pieces of advice? Just anything.
I want to say thank you to you.
Oh, thank you.
Definitely. Thank you.
This is really cool.
Thank you to the community too.
Thanks
for
to
having
everybody.
us.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. This has been so, I think, informative, and it's exciting to get a glimpse behind the scenes at the pizzeria, as it were, and understand a little bit more about how it all comes together. So thank you both for joining us. Thank you for your horror tips as well. Getting that from people with so much experience across multiple genres, I think, is incredibly valuable, and I hope everyone in the chat also enjoyed it. So again, thank you for joining me. We're just going to go over a little bit more about what's coming up on Gamejolt, and then this fireside will be extinguished. And I also encourage you all to follow Steel Wool right here on Gamejolt to learn more about what Steel Wool is up to. But what we're up to here on Gamejolt is opening up the creator program. That's right. On November 29th, the Gamejolt creator program is officially going live, meaning that you watching, all of you watching, you can learn how to apply to the program as well by going to gamejolt.com/creators. And the Gamejolt creator program means you can make money with your content right here on Gamejolt, whether you share videos, art, streams, or games. And be sure to join the Gamejolt community for upcoming announcements, and check out gamejolt.com/creators to learn more about being a Gamejolt creator. That's right. They're on their way to pick me up. They didn't like my flub of that line, and I'm going to pay for it. We also have the Terraria X Gamejolt Skeletron Prime Attacks event coming up, where you, from November 14th through the 21st, can work together to defeat the mechanical evil that is threatening the very existence of our Terraria community right here on Gamejolt. You can craft your favorite weapons, which are endorsed by the Terraria Wiki, by combining ingredient stickers at crafting stations, and Gamejolt will be sure to send you on a quest each day to gather ingredients for a new weapon type. And when Skeletron Prime arrives, we'll party it up in a live stream to defeat this villain once and for all. And be sure to join the Terraria community to learn more about that. And again, I just really want to say thank you both for joining me for this interview. It was a lot of fun, and I'm also just a fan of your work, including your past work at other places. So thank you for joining me. It's really been a pleasure getting to chat with you today.
Hey, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, everybody that's
really
been listening.
Fun. Yep, and thanks all the people on the chat.
Been side-eyeing the chat the whole time.
Yeah, it is hard to side-eye that chat. Yeah, a lot of passionate people.
Yeah, and I want to thank everyone here for your passion, and be sure to keep being passionate about FNAF, posting in the FNAF community, playing the games, and I think with that, this fireside is extinguished.
Oh. There you go.